St. Mary's is special. It's been a special part of my life, and yes, I would definitely do it over again.
I mean, I had a wonderful time at St. Mary's, and I probably didn't study as much as I should have.
If the good Lord were to come and say, what day do you want, I would pick any day in school, because I don't think I ever had a bad day.
The different culture, the different environment, the warm weather, it's just, there's so many pluses to it.
It was a phenomenal experience, I think. They gave you the life-changing foundation.
I chose St. Mary's, and I was very, very happy at St. Mary's. Then I came back, and I've been here ever since, so it's made me a great believer that life takes you where you're supposed to be.
Many things have changed at St. Mary's over the years, but one thing remains the same, the history of 1964.
Those 4 years were the Kennedy years with the Cuban crisis.
The Cuban Missile Crisis occurred in '62 in the dormitories, and I can always remember listening to the jets taking off from the air bases around here and wondering, is something going to happen now?
Kennedy was assassinated. The Vietnam War was in full swing. Students were taking to the street.
Protests in the African-American community, Martin Luther King, and I kept up with that. Those were traumatic times for the U.S.
And I remember thinking, gosh, am I going to live long enough to enjoy and capitalize on my education? Because it got pretty dicey there when you had two nuclear powers kind of in a standoff.
I remember in law school when everybody was somewhat afraid, and then the Kennedy assassination. And the day before the assassination, I was clerking for a law firm downtown, and Kennedy came driving through downtown, and I was standing on the sidewalk and saw him.
I remember that afternoon that everybody, classes stopped everything, and we listened to the loudspeaker as Kennedy made his speech about Cuba and the missiles and how we would back off.
It was the beginning of some of the buildup in Vietnam was starting, which I didn't really have any idea what it was all about. It was really in the early stages, and even when I was in the Army, it was just beginning to build up.
The Vietnam War was starting to ramp up in '61, and when President Johnson came in and kind of stepped that up a bit, that was a time of some strife.
The Vietnam, and I never thought I would end up there, but I did.
It was a very, very exciting and at the same time very tumultuous environment at the time.
With war on the verge of breaking in the 60s, many students were scared because of their mandatory involvement in ROTC.
The first 2 years were mandatory at St. Mary's in those days.
You were in ROTC whether you wanted to be or not. And there was also the draft. So my dad's advice was to, if you're going to have to go into the service, go in as an officer. And this was one way to get a commission. And the undergraduates, the first 2 years when it was compulsory, the last 2 years weren't, of course. That's when you went to advanced ROTC.
After the second year, I didn't continue unless those that wanted to ultimately go in the military, I guess, they went to the third and fourth year.
50 years have gone by since the class of 1964 graduated. Students from the class reflect back on the good times at St. Mary's.
My total experience was at the law school downtown, and at the time we were downtown at 112 College Street, and we used to have a place across the street called the Majestic Bar, and a lot of legal issues and topics were discussed after class at the Majestic Bar. And at the time, this was back in the early 1960s, we used to hang out, quote unquote, with some of the girls that went to Incarnate Word, and so that was a lot of fun.
You have to remember at that time, St. Mary's was not co-ed. I guess you could say it was. There were a smattering of women, but very few. There were no women's dorms, and it was basically a boys' school. And you might have a class, might be one or two girls in it.
My wife's sister got a scholarship out here, a band scholarship. And so she was in the band.
Very first year I was here, there was only about 2. And by the time I left, there was about 10 or 15.
There were very, very few women here. In fact, I joke around saying most of them were nuns. There were probably less than 20, 30. We had a very small female population here. In fact, that's one of the things that when I came back was kind of startling to me at first to get used to, was to see women going into the Chaminade Hall. You couldn't see that. That was allowed only on Sunday afternoons between 1 and 5. But now they live there, and that was a big change for me to see. Living in the dorm by itself was an activity.
I lived on what they call New Chaminade at the basement. We call ourselves the Basement Gang.
I was part of the basement gang. I forgot the name of their brother that was involved, but I remember he walked like Alfred Hitchcock, drug his feet, and he looked like him.
There was a main area where you could shut off the hot water. So if somebody was taking a bath, sometimes we used to turn off the hot water, and I used to take a cold shower and stuff like that.
The one funny one that I can remember, I was talking about the dorm. I remember it was Thanksgiving. There were about 4 or 5 of us Latinos who didn't have the means to go back home for the holiday. And I remember we pitched in to buy, I don't know how much, hamburger meat, I remember. But then we quickly discovered that we didn't have any pots or pans to cook it in. Some guy said, well, I got an iron. I remember put the iron on. Little did we know we could have gotten poisoned with nickel, because that's what irons have. But we jokingly said, put a crease in my burger.
We used to string rooms. We'd get strings and just string them, you know. And we were always doing something.
I was a karate player very, very early. It was well before it became widely known in the United States, but I met a fella who came in that was in the Air Force that had trained in Japan and was a second-degree black belt in Shotokan karate, and he was an incredible karate player. And so he started teaching me kind of one-on-one with a couple of other fellows. And so I ended up getting, some proficiency in karate, and I enjoyed working out. So I was working out, I had some time, and I was working out in the old gym one day, and somebody came over and inquired, what the heck are you doing? Because karate's back then wasn't well known, and it was different. And I explained to him what we were doing. And long story short, he said, well, why don't we invite others to come over and you can teach them karate? So we said, fine. So we set up a little group, and I would meet them once or twice a week, and we would teach them and practice karate. And so, yeah, we set up a little club that probably didn't last once I graduated, but we had maybe 5 or 6 people that would meet and practice karate. It was fun.
We had intramural sports and stuff like that.
There was intramural softball, intramural football between fraternities.
Our fraternity life, we thought we were, all the fraternities thought they were the best, and of course we thought we were the best.
The basketball games and the baseball games, that was the two sports we had at the time.
Buddy Myers, who coached here for many, many years and a distinguished graduate of the university, was on the court at the time.
I don't know what kind of crowds they get anymore to the basketball games, but then everybody went, and that was a big deal.
We used to fill the old alumni gym, which you probably didn't see. It was down next to the new one. We'd fill that, and those basketball games were. My fraternity had the responsibility of selling drinks, so we were involved in selling refreshments in the stands. But it kind of centered around basketball.
I remember the band, particularly obviously in the basketball games.
We were the 6th man for the basketball team, and we played for all the home games here. Sometimes we would go play in Kerrville or in Fredericksburg for the alumni. So Brother Thayer would drive us up there in the Blue Goose, and the only way we'd get the Blue Goose going, and we had to push it, to get it going. So when you got up to Kerrville, it was easy because you pushed downhill. So that's how come we used to park the Blue Goose on top of the hill by the pecan grove. So when you get in it, you'd start pushing and it'd start.
The memories made at St. Mary's continue to be cherished. The spirit and love for this university lives on through the hearts of its students.
It was a phenomenal experience, I think. They gave you the life-changing foundation. They gave you the foundation, not only in educational, but even in the spiritual world.
It was a good life. It was a fun time.
Coming here, there was a whole new group of people from all around the country. And so you get to meet a lot of different people. And there were a lot of Hispanic people who it's in St. Louis didn't associate with. So there was a whole new culture to see and get to know. So that was all intermingled in being involved in St. Mary's.
I chose St. Mary's, and I was very, very happy at St. Mary's.
I remember I came here when I was in high school. It was the last day, you know, because I wanted to see how the band, so I had to come here, and it was on a Saturday. And that time I just saw guys fighting and everything. They're grabbing the seniors, and the swimming pool's right out in back of the band hall. They take them all out there and they throw them. I look forward to 4 years to being thrown in that pool because that was a tradition at that time. And I got thrown in.
The brothers and the fathers and the interest they took, there was a family atmosphere here on the campus. St. Mary's is special. It's been a special part of my life, and yes, I would definitely do it over again.